La Légion du Fantôme, released as Legend of a Ghost in English, is a French dark fantasy occult horror trick film written and directed by Segundo de Chomón. Released in 1908, it stars Julianne Machu as the young woman, with the rest of the cast going uncredited. At 14 minutes, it's silent, and I would classify it as appropriate for ages 8 and up due to some mild fantasy violence. We know very little about the production of this film, except that it was produced by Pathé Frères and thus was very likely filmed in a studio in Paris, France. Its film was hand-painted, frame by frame, possibly by Toulier Studios, who also worked as the colorist for Georges Méliès. Its special effects include stage mechanics, pyrotechnics, and dissolves. Now, I've talked about its writer-director Segundo de Chomón a few times in the past. He was a Spanish screenwriter, director, editor, cinematographer, and special effects artist who moved to France to work directly for Pathé Frères at the behest of his wife, the actress Julianne Machu. He, along with other filmmakers at the company, was often urged to compete with Georges Méliès' space in the market. In many instances, this led to him operating as a sort of director for hire, producing films that followed trends or in some cases mimicked or outright remade other directors' work. But this is not all to say that de Chomón was creatively bankrupt or just mindlessly churned out films for a profit. It's more that it feels like he viewed movies as a means to experiment on a technical level. I think a lot of his artistry was focused less on story, spectacle, or invoking emotion, and more on creatively developing special effects, editing, and cinematography. His work with stop-motion animation alone comprises some of the best early examples of the art form. And the surreal tone he often incorporated into his work largely seems to have been born from him just experimenting. And this alone created films that influenced French cinema quite a bit. After following a ghost to a cemetery, a young woman is convinced by the lost soul to help resurrect him. Aided by supernatural soldiers, she embarks on a quest to retrieve an enchanted pearl that can revive the dead. First, visiting hell, then a kingdom at the bottom of the ocean. I really enjoyed this movie. In fact, I think this is my favorite film by de Chomón. It's longer than most of his movies, and as a result has a more coherent narrative and established main character. Its story is not terribly complex, it's basically a series of fetch quests, but it serves its purpose well as a vehicle for a likable lead and exciting special effects. It even has a few narrative beats that I found pretty surprising for the time, including what appears to be women flirting with each other, and a plot point that I'm actually going to refrain from spoiling. As far as characters go, I really liked the young woman. It's a trick film, so you're not going to get the most complex character writing, but she still managed to charm me quite a bit. She starts the story as just this ordinary person going about her day, but when she's confronted by wild circumstances, she chooses to persist, driven by an obvious curiosity, bravery, and desire to help a stranger. At several points, she shows fear, but chooses to continue onward. It was just nice seeing that in a film from this era, especially with a female character who's a bit queer-coded. I think part of why the character works is because of Machu's performance. She has a natural charisma to her. She's energetic and expressive with a really endearing smile. And the supporting cast is also very fun, very physical, and they lift her up. There's several points where the performers are just giving it their all and running all over the place, and it creates this wonderful, surreal sense of chaos. The film shines the most, though, on a technical level. There are fantastic, diverse sets and on-site locations, plus good costumes and varied shot types, which was not super common in films yet. The special effects and editing are also on point, and there are these incredible vehicles featured throughout. They're so cool. I'm positive they used actual cars and just dressed them up how you would a parade float, but I would love to know more details like their make and model. This was probably crazy unsafe, honestly, but it's so interesting to see automobiles being incorporated into early cinema like this. Overall, every part of this film just comes together into a really fun, memorable adventure. I am going to give Legend of a Ghost a 4 out of 5. I really recommend it to fans of fantasy epics, mythology, early special effects, and female-led adventure stories. One thing I will say though is that for some reason there's a version out there with the scenes edited out of order. It's really strange and it really muddles the film. It's the first one that comes up if you search it on YouTube, so I'd recommend looking to Internet Archive instead if you want to watch the original version. Le Voleur Invisible, released in English as The Invisible Thief, is a French sci-fi comedy film written and directed by Ferdinand Zecca and Segundo de Chomón, with cinematography and special effects having been done by the latter. Released in 1909, it was inspired by the novel The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells, and its stars are uncredited, as was typical for the time. At almost 7 minutes, it's silent, and I would classify it as appropriate for all audiences. We know almost nothing about the production of this film, except that it was inspired by H.G. Wells' 1897 science fiction novel The Invisible Man, and was produced by Pathé Frères, making it very likely that it was filmed in a studio somewhere in Paris, France. De Chomon's co-director was Ferdinand Zecca, a French filmmaker of Italian descent who began as a stage manager, director, and screenwriter at Pathé Frères, before transitioning into a more administrative role at the company. Zecca was, in many ways, a pioneer in the industry himself, with his work spanning across many genres and marking a series of cinematic firsts. In 1901 alone, he crafted one of the first crime dramas with History of a Crime, and a flying machine-centered film with Conquering the Air, which predated the work of the Wright brothers by 2 years. It's almost unsurprising, then, that these two innovative filmmakers would come together to create a small yet remarkably influential piece of art, the first motion picture to feature an invisible man. Using stop-motion animation, wirework, substitution splicing, and superimposition, they were able to create the trick film that would one day inspire James Whale's 1933 sci-fi horror classic, The Invisible Man. After purchasing a copy of The Invisible Man, in this case written by G.H. Wells, a young thief uses a formula he finds in the book to brew his own invisibility potion. After his concoction proves successful, he embarks on a reckless but short-lived and low-stakes crime spree. So this is not much of a horror movie. It's mostly a cute sci-fi comedy based primarily around technical gags, but it still felt really relevant to cover it because its premise and technical innovation would quickly become intertwined with horror cinema. First of all, as I mentioned, James Whale drew inspiration from this movie for his film The Invisible Man, with a scene where the police are being tormented by the thief clearly being recreated in Whale's classic. Additionally, the concept of an unseen force was kind of perfected here. Yes, wirework and editing had already been used to create the illusion of ghosts and invisible presences, but they didn't usually wear clothes like this. This was really advanced for the time. In fact, I'm still not sure how this illusion was executed. If anyone can offer a good guess, I'd love to hear it. As far as story and characters go, there's not really much here. The premise is actually pretty silly. Somehow a book gives the thief the tools he needs to turn invisible, and then he just starts robbing people. But in this case, that's kind of okay. It's a skeletal premise being used to hang great effects on. And for a spectacle-based trick film, you don't really need much else. It's not going to blow you away, in my opinion, but it's still really fascinating as an early entry into special effects. Overall, I am going to give The Invisible Thief a 3 out of 5 based on its technical achievement. It's a fun little romp with not much else to say about it, and I recommend it to anyone with interest in early special effects and, of course, fans of The Invisible Man. And with that, we are finished with the 1900s. That's it, we're done. It is on to the 1910s. Now, going forward, my reviews are going to be changing a little bit, as the 1910s were when trick films began to fade out, getting replaced by both longer form short films and feature-length films. I don't want to give a for sure list of what I'm going to be reviewing, because I found last time I kept changing things. But if anyone has any ideas for films they feel I need to check out for the 1910s, please leave a comment or at me on Blue Sky. I would love to take recommendations. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be very appreciated. You can find my other reviews on this channel, starting all the way back with my review of the first horror film ever made in 1896. You can also follow me on Blue Sky, Letterboxd, and Instagram at Under the Fleapit. If you like what I do and want to support the channel, my Ko-fi donation page and Patreon will both be linked in the description of this video. Until next time, this has been Under the Fleapit. Stay spooky!